Hey everybody, Andrew here. From what I understand, this is an assignment for your guys' AVID class, which is super cool. I actually used to serve as an AVID tutor. I went to Sequoia personally, but I used to serve as an AVID tutor for, I think it was like a year or two, while at Sequoia. Now, obviously, have since graduated high school and college, and am now out in the working world. So it's kind of cool to be on the flip side of the coin here to share a little bit about what I do and answer these 5 questions for you guys. With that, I'll just share a little bit of background about me. Again, my name's Andrew. I'm 25 years old, actually as of May 8th, so super exciting. I currently live out in South San Francisco, and that's very much by design. My main day job that I work is over at a molecular diagnostics company called Veracyte, which is also right in South San Francisco. So super nice to live really, really close by where I work, because a commute is something that when you guys all eventually enter the working world, you will experience, and having a nice short commute is really, really nice. That's a little bit about me. I also went to UC Santa Cruz for college. I got my bachelor's degree in biology, so I was a bio nerd in college, and lo and behold, I'm a bio nerd in real life now. With that, I'm gonna break this video up into I guess this will be the 6th segment, the first one that pops up. The other 5 will just answer the following 5 questions. So stay tuned for those questions and those responses. Thanks. Okay, so question 1 reads, how did you know this career was for you, and what do you like and dislike about it? So I'll start with that first part, how do I know this career is for me? In all honesty, when I started, I didn't. It's any type of career, you can, really all you can do is observe or garner whether you're interested in it, and that's what I did. I was very much interested in biology. I knew I had an affinity for it when it was my freshman year of high school. That was the first intro to bio class that I took. And I ended up taking 2 more years of biology, advanced, or it was not AP biology, but Sequoia has the IB program, which is kind of the same thing. Advanced biology, my junior and senior year of high school. So I took 3 years of bio in high school. Part of my rationale was man, I really didn't hate this, and I enjoyed the content, so I should keep doing this in college. And so that's kind of what I started off at UC Santa Cruz as a bio major and stuck with it, which I'm super glad that I did, because I still really like doing what I do today, which is awesome. Exactly as to what I like or dislike about it, yeah, with any job, there's going to be things that you like and dislike. Again, currently I work at Veracyte, which is a molecular diagnostics company. So we basically help patients who might think they have cancer diagnose cancer. And I work within the lab operations team at Veracyte. So that's a little bit different from our R&D department, which is, developing new assays and developing the new tests that the operations department basically does. And that's what I do. As a lab assistant, we're getting patient samples from all around the world, delivered directly to our lab in South San Francisco. And I'm one of 5 other lab assistants currently. We're doing all the operational setup and stuff like that. I'll get into more of the specifics of my role, but that's working on a team is something that I really enjoy. I have a ton of work experience, working on a team with people. So, and I really like that, as opposed to just kind of any sort of job that would just have you more on a solo project type basis. I think I flounder a little bit in that situation. So something I really like about my job, and the cool thing is it continues to be something that I'll do for a really long time, is being able to work in a team environment. Something maybe I'm not super hot about. What do I dislike about my job? I hate to say a dislike, but maybe the thing that I'm not the most fond of is kind of all the meetings we have. When you work, when you guys go out into the working world, you're gonna find the companies are as much of a small environment as they are a big corporate entity, and Veracyte is not the largest company in the world. I can only imagine how it is at bigger companies. But there's just a lot of meetings, and some of these meetings, like, they don't necessarily pertain to like me and my team and what we do. And sometimes I feel like they get in the way of our week to week kind of like workflow. So pros and cons, but overall it's really cool. Question 2 coming up in the next one. Okay, so question 2 reads, what kind of skills does someone need in order to be successful in the role? Yeah, so I was just briefly talking about kind of like teamwork and working, together with other people. And at least from what I understand, in my own personal experience, I've worked at Veracyte for 2 years now as a lab assistant, and everybody's working on a team, at least like on the lab assistant level, and then on the next career step that I'm looking at, which is becoming like a licensed lab scientist. Both lab assistants and lab assistants are working on a team. So if you have previous like experience, especially in like a work situation or a work environment where you've worked on a team with other people, that's just going to look really, really good for an employer, right? Because employers know the job that they're hiring for, and in the case of a lab assistant, working on a team it's required. It's a huge important thing. So if you have previous demonstrated or even like a successful example of a time that you've worked on a team or worked with other people, that looks really, really well, and that'll put you ahead of a lot of other people who maybe don't have that experience. So just something to know. Other skills, specifically because again we're like nerdy lab biotech. If you happen to have previous lab experience, if you know what a pipette is, if you know how to serially dilute samples, those are nice skills to have too. Not necessarily required. At Veracyte, we very much train all of our new hires like very, very well. I do remember the training process myself. And so, you can like learn, there is a fair degree of like learning a lot on the job as you go. But if you come in with some of those like scientific skills, like again, if you know what pipetting is, if you know how to use a centrifuge, those are all like very applicable things in like almost any lab setting. That would also serve you well and make you look really smart, because a lot of these places also do like a concurrent lab tour after they interview you. And if you're walking around the lab and have questions to ask, that looks really good too. So, yep, that's kind of my answer for question number 2. I will put question number 3 in the next video. Okay, so here is question number 3. It goes, when you were a high school student, what were some of your interests? And actually this is a 2-parter. It's got another question. How were you thinking about your career and future? Okay, so part 1. When I was at Sequoia, feels like so long ago. I don't know why that makes me feel so old, but I'm only 25. I'm not that old. Or maybe you guys are all laughing. I don't know. Maybe I am old. I don't know. Who knows? But when I was not 25 in high school, let's see, gosh, what was I doing? A whole lot of academic classes. I did like the whole IB diploma at Sequoia, so, I'm a nerd now. I was a nerd back then. What a coincidence. I also was doing a lot of extracurriculars. So I was a runner in high school, so I did a ton of cross country and track. And track I really kind of did as like off season for cross country. So I was doing all the long distance events in track. I was like the 2 mile. I think I ran the 800 meter a couple times, but I did not love that one. It's kind of frequently referred to as like the longest sprint for those of you who know track and field. But a bunch of the other cross-country buddies on the team were also on the track team, so it was pretty fun. So I did a lot of that, obviously a lot of running, and that was 2 quarters of the year, and then the 3rd quarter summer and winter, or the middle quarter. I'm trying to think what I was up to. I also TA'd for a bunch of classes too. I TA'd for one of my art teachers one time because she needed someone to like help hang paintings, and she's like, "Hey, you're really tall, like, do you want to do this?" And so that was a cool opportunity, kind of random. But that's just kind of the stuff I was up to in high school. Outside of that, I was also pretty fortunate to live really close to the high school I was at, so I would bike to and from school. And I come from a pretty big family. I'm the oldest of 4 brothers, so when I wasn't like at school or like at cross country and track, I was probably goofing off with my brothers. We were huge proponents of like, going to play outside, especially when there was daylight. And yeah, and we lived on a block where we had a bunch of other buddies our age. So like anything from like just an impromptu game of football in the street to basketball to street hockey. I mean, that was what I was up to. Now, the actual career and future base piece, which is kind of what I'm laughing at. Like, in all honesty, when I was in high school, I probably should have been thinking a little bit more precisely about like what I want to do when I'm done, right? I think it's really hard for a lot of high schoolers to do that in general, or at least it wasn't the first thing on my mind. What I did know, though, is that I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. And so for me, that meant if I don't know 100% what I want to do yet, even though I had an established interest in bio, my thesis was that I was going to continue to just do well in school to keep opportunities open. Because I figured eventually I'd know more, or at least kind of fall into something where I'm like, hey, you know what, I actually kind of like this, and this is what I want to do. And having those stronger grades, having those extracurriculars, and also just like, I don't know, yeah, having a bit of like that fulfilling lifestyle. I'm very much a person who like if I have too much free time, I flounder. Sometimes I put myself in the thick of life so much that I feel like I'm so busy and can get a little bit overwhelmed. So I try to balance things on both sides there. But yeah, I'd say I mean, I know the last question is offering like piece of advice, but and I don't think it should be expected for all high schoolers to know exactly what they want to do. But I will say this, if any of you guys find yourself in my situation or the situation I described where you're like, you know what, like I'm in high school, but I don't know exactly what I want to do yet. Just continuing to like put your best behind the work that you do. I am a prime example of it. Like it does yield dividends. You apply to some of the, if college is the next route for many of you, like, you apply to those schools and those better grades give you much better odds of getting into the schools that you might want to go to. If you're not doing college, like honestly, like going into a trade is also just a phenomenal idea these days too. I've just heard bits and pieces about plumbers and electricians. They're just making money hand over fist. But anyway, all I'm saying is, when I just like to speak in the spirit of candidacy. Like when I was in high school, I was not necessarily thinking about like, oh, I want to be a clinical lab scientist when I grow up, and this is exactly what I want to do. No, I've kind of just discovered it on the way, and I think that's super cool. But also like more power to those of you who also kind of know what you want to do. I think that's really cool too. So, yeah. That's answering question 3. Sorry, that one was a little bit longer, but I'm going to jump into 4, jump into 5, and we'll wrap this up. 4 is in the next one. Okay, question 4. What does an average day at my job look like? So again, quick little recap of my job. I currently work as a lab assistant. I've been there for 2 years at VeriSite, which is a cancer diagnostics company, and I work in the operations lab. So what that means, you can kind of picture it like very much like we're dealing in clean rooms next to very, very expensive like lab instrumentation. We're talking centrifuges. We're talking really, really cold freezers to store our patient samples, like negative 80 degrees Celsius, like super duper cold. We've also got these huge autopipetting robots called Hamilton machines, which automate a bunch of our workflow. But the parts that aren't automated is very much what myself alongside my team of 5 other lab assistants are doing day to day. So I work a kind of a generic Monday through Friday 9 to 5 schedule, but this is also something interesting to know in science. A bunch of the entry level, fresh out of college job positions like lab assistants, they do want to hire you potentially like a Tuesday through Saturday shift or a Sunday through Thursday shift. Because right out the gate, they do need people. These labs run 24/7, right? Samples are always being processed. Unfortunately, cancer just seems to be a constant, and we get a constant inflow of samples. And a bunch of molecular diagnostics companies like VeriSite have a turnaround time that we strictly adhere to. So we get patient results out within 14 days. And that helps physicians recommend next steps based on whether a patient is malignant, which means they have cancer in that region, or not. So anyway, but more about what I do. I work in a room called RNA isolation, which is kind of the second step in a series of 4 steps for our entire lab workflow. Step 1's accessioning, receive the sample, unpack it, make sure there's dry ice in there, otherwise it wasn't frozen and it could potentially be spoiled, and then enter it into our lab information system. And then those samples come down to our room. I'm oftentimes literally the guy receiving those samples, making sure they get into the correct freezer space, because we don't want to lose patient samples. That's really bad. And then I'm alongside my team. We make the batches for Veracyte in particular has 3 assays that we do. One for lung cancer, one for thyroid cancer, and one for prostate cancer. So all of those batch requirements that the CLSs, the clinical lab scientists, are going to do their procedure on, they require different setups. So my team and I are responsible for building those setups and making sure that we stay on schedule. That's our main responsibility. We also do a bunch of like machinery maintenance, and kind of like other things that just like increase our knowledge and familiarity and scope in the lab in general. So that's an average day at Veracyte. It's kind of hard to just like describe in words. It'd be cool to do like a little video, but that would also be kind of difficult too. So yeah, that's kind of the answer to question number 4. I'll jump into question 5 and we'll be done. Okay, question number 5. Perhaps maybe the most important one of all. I don't know. This one makes me feel old, but it goes, what is one piece of advice you'd like to leave me with? Oh my gosh. I don't know. Am I old enough to be answering this question? Sure, I guess. But just based on my whole life experience and what has worked and what hasn't, and I'd have to say, like, if I could go back to like high school Andrew and drop one sentence for him, I would probably tell him to do a little bit more research on what career opportunities there are for what you are potentially going to study. And the cool thing is, when you know that, it's okay to let that influence your decision on what you might want to do, right? Had I known that there was like this really cool career path opportunity to like jump straight out of, I was so fortunate, I jumped straight out of college. 2.5 weeks later, I had this job at Veracyte. There was a huge demand. It was right after COVID. Huge demand for lab assistants in general. Across a bunch of molecular diagnostics companies. Veracyte's one of many here, by the way, since we're in the Bay Area. There's biotech all the way from San Francisco to San Jose now. There's biotech companies over in Redwood City as well. But again, Veracyte, one of many, many companies at the time that was looking for it and was hiring people fresh out of college. And I didn't know anybody at Veracyte. I just applied. I applied there and about 3 other companies, and I heard back from 2, Veracyte being one of them. And Veracyte was closer and had a better offer and stuff like that. But anyway, I think I got a little off track there. But piece of advice, yes, if I could go back to younger Andrew, I would tell him, hey, like, look into like what career opportunities there are, because again, knowing that you could go from a clinical lab assistant and then now there's like a cool like clinical lab scientist pathway that I'm actively pursuing and applying for, like as a program opportunity to like go to the next step in the ladder. I think like any position that has sort of like that cool like potential for a career ladder where you get to learn and develop and become better at something you're interested in, I think that's just like an extra like positive feedback loop that would have further motivated me to maybe do a little bit better in some of my classes, or take on an extra, instead of like, I worked a bunch of summer camp jobs and I don't regret them for an instant, super duper fun, but maybe take on like a part-time internship at a lab one summer, rather than like work or summer camp job, which again, it has that team building experience that I mentioned in questions 2 and 3 were really valuable, but some direct lab-based experience probably would look really, really good too. And it maybe would have made my job search even easier. Who knows? You don't have to be a lab rat like me to look into like career opportunities for whatever major or whatever subject you're even thinking of, right? It doesn't even have to be like a major. But if you notice like, hey, I really love this writing stuff, look into what you can do with that. If you're like, hey, like I totally get math, look into what you can do with that, right? I'm also a part-time tutor, and I wasn't a math major, but I know math like that all the way up to calculus. So I do that part-time too, just because it's a strength of mine, and a lot of people need help in math. Also, kind of after COVID, with all of the craziness that was online school. But that's just like another potential option too. And like understanding what you can do with these skills to meet the market, which is the job market in general, and like, build like a lifestyle off of that can be really cool. And it would be very valuable to know, rather than like pulling a me getting pretty lucky that I get a job right out of school, but not really knowing like what a clinical lab scientist or a clinical lab in general was. And I probably should have just known that going in, because I should have done research way back, potentially when I was in or even in college, just to like understand like what exactly I'm getting myself into. But fortunately, like I got myself into it. I really love it. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to share a little bit of all this in these 5 videos. I hope all this isn't like too long. I know I kind of ramble on. I see the counter right now. It's at like 5 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up right here. But again, those are the answers to my 5 questions. And I hope you all have a great day. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Bye.